Hello.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. So nice to reconnect.
I know. It's been a while.
It
I
is.
also have a friend here who
Mm-hmm.
wanted to say hello.
Oh, hi.
This is Chester.
Esther?
Chester, yeah.
Oh, that's
He's
so
my
cute.
emotional support dog.
Oh, that's so cute. Hi, Chester. Your little
How's your
puppy.
Friday going?
It's good. It's good. I mean, we're still working as usual. Luckily, we are able to be working from home.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to, do this. I'm really happy to connect, and then we can talk about, mental health and then self-love because, it is so important as May is mental health awareness month. So I'm so happy to connect.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you as well.
Yeah. So just a little bit just a little bit info on both of us. So me and Julia, we met in an event from Shopify. I believe it was about 6 months ago. It feels about six months
Was
ago.
it
Probably
6 months ago?
longer.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
But yeah, so we actually met at a self-love event that is exactly about mental health and about how to be aware, how to, do positive self-talk. I still remember, and it was a great time. I learned so much tips and amazingly connected with, Julia.
Yes.
So yeah, so let's get started. First of all, best way to increase our self-love and tips on, maintaining and improving our mental health. So I know
Sure.
that Julia started Broglie Box. I remember not, it was pretty like a couple months ago or a year ago. Just tell us a little bit about Broglie
Yeah,
Box.
sure. I can go ahead and tell you a little bit about my backstory and like the company, if that's helpful for anyone that's not aware of us. But yeah, so the company is called Broglie Box, and Broglie is my last name, and I co-founded the company with my partner Dustin as a tribute to my brother Justin, who I lost by suicide. And I have always dealt with mental health challenges over the course of my life: anxiety, depression, OCD, perfectionism, and was always looking for tools and resources to find coping mechanisms to help myself. But I was always embarrassed about these challenges that I was going through and felt like I was the only one going through them. And then after my brother died, it kind of woke me up to this realization that, unfortunately it was a crisis that led me to realizing that I needed to really get help for myself. And it also led me to start speaking more openly about mental health and my own challenges. And, I felt responsible to tell my brother's story and keep his memory alive. And through that, so many people, like friends, family, like random people on the internet, started coming to me and telling me that they related to my story and that they were going through the same things. And so it was this almost like this situation of me too, or like same here, like I'm going through that as well, and here are some tools and resources that have helped me. Or people ask me, do you have any resources that you could recommend? And so at the time I didn't have them, so I made this like Excel spreadsheet that was like color coded and all these different resources and products that I knew to be helpful either for myself or just through my community, like, asking different people and doing the research on what helped them. And that kind of became the catalyst or like the driving initial factor in creating Broglie Box. And what we do at Broglie Box is we send care packages of tools and resources for mental health and stress relief. So there's physical products in there to help people build healthy habits and implement these daily practices of checking in with your mental health. And then we have our own magazine that has articles, guides, and resources from mental health professionals. So therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, just really an all-inclusive resource toolkit. And a lot of people send Broglie Box as a gift. And I think it's the ultimate act of self-love and you know, when you're buying it for yourself, or you know, love to someone else, and you're showing them like, hey, I really care about you and I want you to take care of your mental health and your overall well-being, and here's a toolkit that kind of can help you do that. So that's kind of the backstory.
That's a great idea, because when I first learned about Broglie Box, I wasn't so sure what exactly is subscription box for mental health, right? It sounds vague, so I was really curious about how a subscription box can help with the mental health. But then I look at the website, when I look at the content that's actually included, I think that it's very interesting, it's very empowering, it's definitely really helpful. It's not just focusing on there are products like candles, you know, little goodies that make you feel happy, but I love how there are also brochures and flyers with, you know, or journal and little notebooks or things that is actually giving out very useful information for people who need it. So I think it's a great idea.
Thanks. Yeah. And we actually, so we actually just pivoted the company, and we're no longer offering the subscription aspect of it, because we had so many people asking us, like an overwhelming number of people ask us for boxes specific to one type of challenge or one type of person. And so now we're offering, I think we have like 6 different options right now on our website, but we have other ones rolling out as well. So we have one for grief. We have one that's called Wellness Warrior, and that's kind of like the most generalized one. We have one called Stress Less, for that's like anyone experiencing burnout. They're an entrepreneur, or they're working from home and they're experiencing, they're like a workaholic and they don't know how to manage their time. So just keeping mental health in line there. We also have a student box. So yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Like when I met you, the company was solely focused on subscription, and we changed the box items every 3 months. And then we had so many people that told us they wanted old boxes or items from old boxes, and we couldn't accommodate that. So now we're able to accommodate that, and kind of people can choose what exactly they want. So it's really exciting.
I think it's great. I think we got to start at some point as a start, and then we slowly learn from our experience and our customer feedback to know what exactly people need. And then I think it's great that you have different type of boxes for people to choose, because as you said, everyone have different problems and they have different issues. It will be better and more efficient that people can choose what exactly as well. So it's a great idea. I think it's a great change. That also tells us that how important is customer feedback. Like
I know
in this room, like whatever product you like or not like, really need to tell them, so that, you know, I believe it's also a great time. Is a lot of the product and the company and business, they're really trying to find out what people like and want, and help to offer,
especially in this time too, you know, like with the global pandemic. I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to listen to, you know, the people that are buying the product from them. And we did have some people say that they were sad about the subscription aspect going away. So who knows, like we could bring it back eventually, but we wanted to focus our time really on the issues that we saw that people really needed our support in. And so that's why we did the specialized boxes. But when you ask me about self-love, you know, I just think like, you know, even for people out there that might be struggling right now, one thing that's helped me is really listening to myself. It kind of goes along with what we were saying about listening to customers, but like listen to yourself. And if you find yourself having negative thoughts, you know, like for me personally, like there are 3 negative thoughts that tend to always bubble up. And so I've identified those by really listening to myself. And what helps me is to actually write those negative thoughts down and cross it out with a pen, and then have write a little arrow and reframe that negative thought, so that anytime those negative thoughts bubble up or I feel them coming on, I can reference like this piece of paper that I have, and I see that I actually crossed it out and I rewrote that script. That's one thing that's like really helped me. And there are many affirmation type of apps out there if you're not good at writing something like positive about yourself. So you can practice through affirmations like I am good enough, I am strong enough, I am beautiful. You know, those types of things are really been helpful for me, especially in this time, because we're kind of like stuck with ourselves right now, you know?
Yes, I totally agree. I do feel like writing down things is such an important thing, important and helpful tips. For me is that I always have a lot of self-doubts. So a lot of time, there's an interesting word that I've heard pretty recently, a couple months ago. It's called imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I always feel like, oh, maybe I got this done, or I come to where I am just because I'm lucky, because somebody else helped me, because, you know, this coincidence or things like that.
Or
so
like,
always
oh man, people are gonna find out about who I really am or something. It's like
yes. What if they found out that I'm not that great, or maybe I'm not particularly good at something, you know? So a lot of doubts always happen, especially you know, in a time where everybody's stuck at home, and then we have a lot more time where we are in complete silence, and then have lots of thoughts on our heads. So that's also why that I also read a lot of things and try to find tips to help with this. And then I do feel like your method about writing negative thoughts down is very helpful. Another way that I do it, where I learned from another article, is to write down a little success story. So like today, I write down a thing that I achieved today. For example, something I planned just sprouted, or I made a new dish, or I made a perfect sunny side up. Just a little thing. So any small thing that happens that would make you happy, that you're aware, or small things like that, can help me to, you know, more how to, like, it could help me with my self-doubts. So whenever I feel like, oh, am I not good enough? Am I, you know, all the thoughts, I would read that list and see what I have achieved, and it does help me daily with this problem.
Yeah, no, like success of the day or success of the week is something I started implementing with something one of my coaches actually and mentors recommended, because I would, you know, I would go through the day and I felt like I didn't actually accomplish anything. And so I would start to get really down about myself. And it's like, okay, like there was a win somewhere in there. And it may not be this grand win every single day or every single week, but there is something that went right that day that you can celebrate in some way. And then it's kind of amazing to look back like at the whole month and see 30 wins, whether they're small or big or whatever. Like, you know, I think we're quick to dismiss accomplishments and not really celebrate them. And we often compare our like win to someone else's win when we're on totally different paths. And so I think that's a really good idea. So do you have like a journal, or do you write it in like a calendar, or where do you write it?
Yeah, I have a journal that I would write it down. I use different type of journals. I wrote it down on paper, but then I also write it down on an app, because an app can help me to write it down outside. So I've been using it for almost a year right now. I do find it really helpful. And another thing that we would like to talk about is how to open up. Is that, you know, when we talk about the word mental health, it's a little weird. It used to be weird. Now it's better, but still it's something that not everyone's open to talk about, because it's hard to admit that you're weak, or you have some, you know, little you have a flaw, you know, you have problems. It's hard to tell people about it and not seem fragile. I think that's the thing, is for me it's hard to admit that I could be fragile. So especially now we're trying so hard with all the woman empowerment things. We don't want to be seen as emotional, or, you know, things like that. But everybody could be emotional. There's nothing wrong with it.
So true.
So that is thing, like emotion is the nature. All humans have emotion. The problem is that do we have to hide it? What is the better way to deal with it, right? So I would love to hear your opinions about, you know, how to open up, how to talk about it. And
yeah, so I think just like you said with emotions, the same is true for mental health. And most people think like, oh, you know, like I'm dealing with mental health. And it's like, well, every single person actually has mental health. And most people think it's like, you know, you're either perfectly healthy or you're mentally ill. And the reality is that there's sort of like this spectrum, and that spectrum, you could kind of fall anywhere within that spectrum, and that can fluctuate on a daily basis. And what most people find is that, you know, they're going from like perfectly healthy, and they're kind of like creeping up on the spectrum, and then there's a crisis, and then they have a huge issue, and now they're dealing with the aftermath. Whereas something that, you know, like we like to promote with Broglie Box, and just like in general advocacy, what I like to say is, you know, we should be thinking about our mental health on a daily basis, because every single person has it. And if you maintain when you're healthy, and maintain when you're feeling good, and practicing, you know, implementing these healthy habits, then it'll prevent you from getting to that crisis. I think once you're there, once you're in a place where you feel like you need extra support, one thing that helped me realize that there were so many other people experiencing the same exact thing as me, and I was too embarrassed to talk about it, because I felt like, no, like in my situation before my brother died, I felt like I had everything in the world. You know, I had an amazing family. I was in a good school. Like I was in college at the time, and I had a great support system. Like nothing happened to me that made me feel like I deserved to get help. And it turns out, like later, much later, years later, when I now openly speak about it, and I look at my friends back then, some of them were experiencing the same exact thing as me. And we all were like in the same room, just not talking about these things to each other, when we could have actually supported each other through that. And so I think, you know, like having that first maybe awkward conversation of, hey, I'm really struggling. You know, it might be awkward at first, but then it becomes easier over time. And ultimately, like looking back, I'm like, I wish I would have spoken up, because it would have led to me feeling better sooner. So although it might have been challenging or awkward or embarrassing, even though there's nothing to be embarrassed about, but like you could feel embarrassed at first if you're, you know, if that's the way you're feeling. But the point is, like, the sooner you talk about it with people who can actually help you find support, then you're going to feel better sooner, and you're going to get the help that you need sooner. And chances are that person you're talking to has either experienced the same things that you're experiencing, or knows someone who experienced that. So it's definitely becoming like a more common conversation, which is great.
yeah, I totally agree. For me, I grew up in a very conservative country, so a lot of times, oftentimes I feel like if I tell somebody, I don't know if I'm giving him or her a hard time. Sometimes I would imagine if someone told me something really difficult, I might be concerned, like what is the right response. I don't want to upset them, but I don't know what kind of advice is appropriate to give them. So that's also the thing, is that I don't want to bother people and have them have a difficult time not knowing how to respond to me. So that's also a little challenge to us, is that for you, I would like to know you, like, how do you find the like-minded people? Like, how do you know that this is someone that is willing to listen to you, or you just keep trying? Or, you know, what is there any sign that would help you to kind of locate them?
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone considers you to be their friend, like if you consider someone to be your friend,
Yeah.
and you open up the conversation about you struggling with something, if they're your friend, then they're gonna listen to you, and they're gonna support you. And yes, like I can totally relate to what you're saying about not wanting to burden someone else with something that you're going through. But if it were anything else, like if it were a breakup, or if it was like, you know, like a you got fired from your job, like any hard situation, that, like life situation, you would go to your friend to talk about that. So the fact, like with mental health, it's really no different. It's just that it's sort of like a new thing for people, and so I think over time it'll get easier. But I just feel like if you're friends with someone and you're like-minded and all of your other common interests, then they're going to want to support you in that. And so I think like where the challenge becomes, you know, with education and awareness, people always ask me like, what do I say if my friend comes to me, or how do I identify if I think my friend is depressed? And there are definitely like signs and symptoms that, you know, you can look out for. And maybe you have to be the one to start conversation with a friend that you might think is struggling, and then they know that you're open to that conversation. So I think it's definitely like a two-way street. And then the challenge also becomes like, how do you find the right therapist or someone that, you know, really clicks with you? And that's also something that, you know, like I think deserves, you know, like space in this conversation. Is you may not find the right therapist the very first time you go to see a therapist, and that's just the reality of it. Like you may not click with that person right away. But the good news is that there's so many amazing therapists out there, and you just have to keep trying until you find the right fit. And so, yeah, I think like the first time I ever went to see a therapist in high school, I didn't click with her. She didn't resonate with me. And she was probably like a really great person. She probably resonated with someone else, but I was just looking for like something very different. And when I eventually found that, it was like, okay, this clicks, this makes perfect sense. You know, like, and now this person's really going to help me.
Yes, yes. I totally love what you just said, because a lot of times people does find it really hard to whether finding a friend that is like that is like-minded, or you know, finding a therapist that's actually what you need. So that comes to what another topic that we really want to cover is how to connect with communities, like how to find those group of people that maybe need the same thing or experience the same thing, that can help us to, you know, locate or find the right therapist and friends.
Yeah, no, I think there are some amazing organizations out there. And I think this is like the beauty of social media, where you can find a community that resonates with you. I mean, when you're looking for a therapist in particular, or there's a lot of matching services out there. There's also, I don't know if you've heard of To Write Love on Her Arms, but they actually have a space on their website, and it's a matching or like find a therapist type of thing, and you can put in your preferences. And so like, you know, if you're looking for someone very specific, or you're like, you know, you're looking for a therapist to combat a specific issue, you can filter all of those preferences, and it'll match you with someone. But yeah, there's so many amazing organizations. And actually, we just had an Instagram live this morning with Gabby Frost. She's the founder of an organization called Buddy Project. And Buddy Project, their whole mission is to connect like-minded people. So you connect with like a buddy based on your preferences, and it's just peer-to-peer support. So maybe if you're not ready to yet have that conversation with your friends, but you want to find someone to talk to, then that's a perfect option for like, you know, getting started and getting comfortable with that type of conversation.
Yeah, great. I totally agree, because I love how there are more and more organizations and communities being built online using social media and emails and Facebooks, you know, everything. More and more websites and nonprofits, they're creating communities specifically for certain things. It could be female entrepreneur or creatives, and then all of those communities are helping each other. Like if we go online right now and we search, you know, a community for a certain thing, we can always find something. For example, if women who have certain like heart disease or endometriosis, or mothers with certain problems, they're so specific. I love how people are so becoming more and more aware of things like this, and then they started to really building up communities, all kinds of different communities to help each other. So it's like a great thing at a great time.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need like a group of people who are going through the same thing as you and can relate to what you're saying or answer questions. Like if you have a question and you just want to get someone else's opinion on their experience with, you know, a type of like how they handled a situation. I think there's something really beautiful about peer-to-peer support. And there's a quote, and I don't know who said it, but I think it just resonates with me so much. It's like, would you listen to the person who has fought and won 100 battles, or would you listen to the person who has read 100 books on battles? So it's like, you know, like there's so much to be said about connecting with someone who has like been through what you've gone through.
Yes, totally agree. And then another thing is with the benefits from social media, we are also having negativities from the social media, and with all the news going on and everything. So how do you remove the negativities from your
I think like curating your feed to foster, you know, like foster what makes you feel good is so important. I think, you know, even like if there are people in your life that are your friends and you know, I think there's like stigma associated with like the unfollow, like it could create drama in your friend group or something, but there's actually options to mute that person from your feed. And I just think like we actually have so much control over what we look at on a daily basis. You know, I think limiting your screen time is so important in general, but when the reality is like you're going to be on Instagram, you're going to be on Twitter, you're going to be on TikTok now, you know, and it's like, look, like, you know, curate your feed to the people that uplift you and inspire you, because I truly believe that we are an average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with, like around in person. And I think like now that we're moving into this like digital age and this age of, you know, like connecting with people virtually because of the global pandemic, it's like you become like your thought patterns start to you know, like habituate over the people that you're looking at constantly. So if you're looking at things and they're not making you feel good, then that's how you're going to feel good. And so I think just really like realizing that you have control over that is the first step, and then taking action to make it better.
I totally agree. For me, when the lockdown just started, I look at the news every day and then I read the comments of those news. It just so much hate, so much negativity, so much arguing. So slowly I realized that it's better if I just, you're right. Yeah, like you're so right about we have control over this. That means I can just maybe read the news once a week or twice a week. And maybe I actually started doing this like 2 weeks ago. Is I just stopped reading any comments. I read the news, okay, good, and I'm not gonna read any of the comments, because there are always somebody who's liking it, somebody who's hating it. It's never perfect. There are so many people, so many voices. It's the beauty of being able to express whatever you want to tell, but also it is you know, it's a negativity, it's a negative thing that you don't always have to, you know, suffer if you don't want to.
So true.
Yeah, so it is challenging, but I do feel like slowly this lockdown and this whole challenging thing that's happening right now does give us a lot of time and space to explore and develop what suits us the best.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely life-changing for every single person in the planet. So
I couldn't agree more.
It's good and bad. So the last thing is my plan was to talk about this only when we have time, but I still really want to talk to you about about confidence and self-esteem. I know that we talk about imposter syndrome. Is there any tips or advice from you or your experience or your products that can help us to, you know, build on that, and how do you think self-esteem would affect mental health?
I think that they're so related, right? Because like the thoughts that you're telling yourself is going to affect your mindset, your mood, your productivity. So I think all of these things are related. And like self-esteem has been something that I've always had to work on. And that's why like I'll go back to that negative thought reframing, but also like the affirmations, even without the negative thoughts. Like I have sticky notes all over my house, like on my bathroom mirror, and just to remind, like notes that I've written to myself and statements of affirmations or mantras that I've written that I want to implement in my life. And I want to hear myself, you know, sometimes I'll literally say it out loud to myself in the mirror. And that's really helped with my self-esteem. I think also like, you know, we talked about win of the week, but just remembering like your accomplishments and how far you've come. And for me, it's like especially with dealing with depression, I think like, wow, like I'm so strong that I got through that horrible time, you know, like, and I have to remind myself of that. But it's true, like we're just quick to dismiss and focus on the negativity of our lives. And I think that's why it's really important to, you know, to have these like mantras or affirmations present around us and remind ourselves. Like I have this app, it's called Affirm It, and it literally like you can either preload the affirmations that you want to it to remind you, or you can like randomize it, so it's like a random one every day, but then it just pops up at a random time, and it's like it's such a great reminder, and it's just like that little burst of positivity that can boost your self-esteem, and it's coming from you, which I think is even more impactful.
Yes, that sounds great. That's a great tip. I would love to look that up as well.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. That was a great, amazing conversation. I have so much new tips and, you know, info from you. I'm glad to see, you know, a lot of people joining the conversation, and then I hope everybody gets, you know, learn something and found something that you need from our live today.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And I've been using Nannocare this week. It's that time of month, so thank you for developing such an amazing product.
Thank you. You too. Broglie Box is definitely very inspiring. I think that we should do more things like this more often and collaborate. I'm hoping to be able to have more.
Sorry, the dog is barking. Chester.
No problem. I'm hoping that we're able to have more collaboration, not online but also offline after the lockdown. But
yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. I would love that so much.
Yes. So thank you guys for your time. Thank you, Julia. And
Thank
we'll
you.
talk soon.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.